Hi, I'm Belinda, and this is Worderilla Reads, where gentle magic, Jane Austen banter, and all the swoons control our TBR piles. Please enjoy these episodes in any order. I'm so glad you're here today. Hello, and welcome back to Worderilla Reads. I have a confession before we begin. This episode was supposed to go up like 18 hours ago, but working ladies gotta work, and maybe I was reading and writing, which in my defense, I like to call research, and you'll see why in a couple of minutes. A couple things before we get into the topic for today. One, my Kickstarter is coming up very soon. So today is Thursday, May 7th as I record this. The Kickstarter for An Uncanny Bargain is opening Tuesday, May 12th. If you are a newsletter subscriber or a Patreon member, even the free ones, then there will be I will basically be sending a free gift along with your reward as a thank you for being a long-term sustaining supporter. So to make it easy or to make it simple to track, I'm probably going to do secret tiers. So anyone who uses a secret tier link, I will know gets the free gift. But the pricing and everything's going to be the same. So it's more like if you want the free gift for being a newsletter subscriber or a Patreon member, use the secret tier link. If you don't really mind and you just want to support the campaign, which thank you so much, then you can use the regular public links. Either way, I'm super excited for this campaign. Really excited for you to meet Drew and Edith and show off the work that I've been doing for the last, 3 years, I think, according to my writing journal. So that's the big news. In terms of the actual book itself, I have drawn a couple of the interior illustrations, and I am 30% of the way through the clean edit, which is to say that I have done all my handwritten edits. I'm bringing them back into the computer. As I do that, I run it through Pro Writing Aid to catch any sort of grammar mistakes, and then I'll send it to my editor, and hopefully this draft will be clean, so clean that she'll be able to just give commentary maybe on the plot and just inconsistencies rather than having to fix my grammar errors. So to go back to today's topic, I would like to talk about 10 books, one per author, that I think you should read if you, like me, are the sort of person who has considered whether it would be feasible to live in 1887 England. Now, not with the cholera or limited voting rights, so I'm not saying vintage values, but I am saying vintage fashion. The parts with the long skirts, and the proper calling cards, and the vague but thrilling sense that something supernatural may be happening in the East Wing, and everyone is pretending it isn't. Call back to my Beauty and the Beast friends. So these books are for people who want their history to be a little magical, their magic to be a little bit funny, and their romance to be slow enough that you have time to press your hands to your face and make some undignified sounds about it. So we're going to start with some obvious choices. These are some of my favorite reads in the historical cozy fantasy romance genre, and then we'll work our way up to more ambitious ones, and then we'll close it out with a couple that you may already know. So the first one is The Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels by India Holton. Now, if you have not read India Holton, I want you to understand that she is doing something no one else in the genre is doing. And the tone, and I 100% mean this as a compliment, the tone of her books are completely unhinged in the best possible way. The premise of this particular series is that proper Victorian ladies fly houses around England and steal things, and the prose treats this as absolutely normal, while also having a lot of asides that kind of wink at you. So the narrator breaks the fourth wall a little bit. It's pretty cute. So in the first book of the series, The Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels, Cecilia, I think it's Basingwaite, is a lady thief. There happens to be a pirate. There happens to be an aunt who needs rescuing. There are 3 laws of this society: no killing civilians, pour the tea before the milk, and no stealing each other's houses. And the third law definitely has a story behind it, and this book does not disappoint on that story. So this is your entry point into cozy fantasy romance. I would definitely start here if you are a fan of Jane Austen and Douglas Adams. Second book that I would recommend is Scales and Sensibility by Stephanie Burgess. Stephanie is very Austen-esque. It was actually reading Scales and Sensibility that made me realize, oh, I could actually bring more magic into my books, more supernatural things into my books. So the spin on this for Sense and Sensibility is that this book has a little dragon. It's a little dragon that a spoiled cousin can't manage. So then that sends our sensible heroine Eleanor off on an adventure that she totally did not mean to have. Some people have described it as like Howl's Moving Castle meets Mansfield Park, and I think that's pretty accurate. It definitely is a soft nod to Sense and Sensibility and even Mansfield Park. So if you are the sort of reader who loves Jane Austen's books, but wish there were more dragons, honestly, then I would check out Scales and Sensibility. The third book on the list, and this is one of my absolute favorites, is Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. I read this back when it was indie published. It has now since it's had its rights given over so that you can actually get the traditionally published copy now in places like Barnes & Noble. This book is so good, you guys. Olivia Atwater's imagination. I am in awe. Okay, so the idea behind this story is a fairy stole half of Theodora's soul when she was a kid, which means, and somehow that has basically meant that she doesn't have any sense of fear or embarrassment, which in Regency England is basically the quickest way to cause a scandal, because if you don't have fear of society and if you don't feel embarrassed by making mistakes, then society has no control over you. Theodora's love interest, he is the most ill-mannered man in society. He's also the only one who finds her refreshing rather than alarming. And as you guys know, I love a hero who loves a gal who does not apologize for who she is, and instead points to her and says, why is everyone not seeing how cool she is? This one is definitely on the more magical side, dealing with the Fae. We have split personality, Regency England. It's really good. Some people say it's a soft entry. I think it does have some hints of dark undertones simply because of some of the historical details that they pull in, which again are really good and help with the story. So I'm not as concerned about it. It's nothing that harms the main characters at all. So I would still, even though this book was not written during what we would call the cozy fantasy era, I would say that it's within range, I suppose. All right, the fourth book, Manners and Monsters by Tilly Wallace. Now this book is, so when I read Manners and Monsters, I was like, oh my God, someone else is writing stuff like I'm writing. I had written Haunting Miss Trentwood back in 2010. No one was writing whimsically gothic historical fantasy romance at the time. So when I found Tilly Wallace's work, I was stoked. Like, she has historical England, she has magic woven into ordinary life, she is a heroine who is sensible and observant, and she happens to find herself inconveniently involved in a murder investigation. So these are actually definitely more mystery leaning, and then the romance is a slow burn across many books. So when we say slow burn, it is a slow burn, definitely following the sort of structure of a mystery series rather than a straight romance where you would have your happily ever after at the end of the book, or even a happily for now. So in Manners and Monsters, Hannah is helping her parents research this terrible magic illness, basically, and then a murder happens at her best friend's engagement party, and that pulls her into something way bigger. And then Viscount Wycliffe is also an investigator. He's obnoxious. Hannah's not impressed, but they're going to have to solve the crimes together whether they like it or not. So they definitely got some Darcy Lizzie vibes, I think, with this one, which I find a lot of fun. And if you have read my books and enjoyed them, I think there's a pretty good chance that you're going to love Tilly Wallace's worlds. Just know that they have a heavier mystery bent than romance, and the romance tends to travel across multiple books. Fifth book that I would recommend, Bellbreaker by Charlie Ann Holmberg. This one is Victorian England, alternate history, which honestly, all these books you could probably say are an alternate history because unless there's a world we don't know of, which is very possible. I don't think Victorian England had magic, but who knows? Anyway, Spellbreaker is set in Victorian England. There's a magic system built around class and wealth, and in true Charlie and Holmberg fashion, the magic system is both clever and fun, and also a commentary on society. So Elsie is what's known as an unregistered spellbreaker. So this is someone with the ability to unmake magic, which makes her a very valuable person, but also in a lot of danger. And Bacchus has traveled from Barbados to be named a master spellmaker, but the establishment isn't super excited about it because he happens to be of mixed heritage. So they end up in each other's orbit, like Elsie and Bacchus, because of a debt, basically, and then they end up in each other's orbit because of murder. And then because of more murders, we find out that because of feelings, basically, as more things happen and they're thrown together more often and becomes forced proximity, we start to recognize some feelings that we don't want to acknowledge. I love this book in particular because it wouldn't exist without Howl's Moving Castle. So Charlie and Holmberg has a podcast. I think it was on hiatus for an undetermined amount of time with Caitlin McFarland. And so in that podcast, Charlie mentioned that she got the idea for Spellbreaker because she was watching Howl's Moving Castle. In Howl's Moving Castle, the Witch of the Waste says this throwaway comment, which is, "Oh, honey, I make spells. I don't break them." And that one sentence is all Charlie needed. Because Charlie has a crazy active imagination, and she's a very prolific writer, so if you enjoy her books, you have many to choose from. Spellbreaker is a duology, so the romance is split over the two, and I would call it, it's definitely a sweet romance, similar to Jane Austen. We're going to get excited with a handhold or a kiss, so really enjoy that one. Okay, next we have The Lord Stariel by A.J. Lancaster. So this is another indie author. So of the books I suggested, Olivia Atwater is a hybrid author. Stephanie Burgess is also now a hybrid author, but I met both of their works when they were still, I guess, fully indie. And then we have AJ Lancaster. And this one, again, kind of has like 10th Kingdom, if anyone remembers that miniseries from the early 2000s. I was kind of obsessed with it, but when you go back and watch it, I'm not sure it stands the test of time. Anyway, in The Lord of Stariel, the Stariel estate has to choose its new lord after the old one dies. So when I say that, I mean the land has to pick its new lord. Now, everyone knows it's probably going to be the eldest son or maybe the favorite nephew, but you know, it's definitely not going to be Hedda, who is the scandalous daughter who ran away to study illusion magic. And as we all know, of course, and if you read the back of the book, this is not a surprise, it is Hedda. So this one has been described as Howl's Moving Castle meets Downton Abbey. As you will see, a lot of these reference Howl's Moving Castle. I think there's an entire generation of us authors who probably saw Howl's Moving Castle, the Studio Ghibli movie version, probably at a particular time in our lives, maybe as teenagers or something. And between that and movies like Beauty and the Beast and the cartoon show Gargoyles, I think, you know, just write us off. We're just living in a fantasy world and we're okay with it. Lord of Stariel is definitely cozy and atmospheric, but it has a ton of family dynamics, which I think is where the Downton Abbey part comes in. And it does have a very slow but very satisfying romance. And the book exhibits another favorite trope of mine, which is the butler who is not entirely what he seems. Now, some people may not consider this next book exactly cozy fantasy, but I found this book so entertaining. It made me laugh out loud, actually, in a couple of moments, and that's really hard to do, to make someone laugh through prose. So this book is The Sorcerer to the Crown. This is by Zen Cho. So Zen Cho, I love her writing because she does feel like a modern Jane Austen, very precise with her word choice, has a lot of that social wit, and has the imagination of someone who finds Regency society both constraining and fascinating and worth poking at. So Zacharias is England's first African sorcerer royal, which means he is both the most powerful magician in the country and the most unwelcome one per the period. Prunella has immense magical power and sees no reason to be modest about it, which is a delightful break from Regency societal expectations. And together, Zacharias and Prunella end up changing sorcery in Britain, whether Britain wants them to or not. So I think it was Naomi Novik, or I hope that's who said this, but basically described the Sorcerer to the Crown as a mix of Georgette Hare and Susanna Clarke. So Georgette Hare really is if Jane Austen started the concept of the novel and the specific narrative structure that she uses, Georgette Hare started the obsession with the Regency era. And all of her books are very dense, prose-wise. They are funny. There are some problematic descriptions of characters. The lady herself has some problematic beliefs about certain groups of people. So I can't remember which titles they are, but there are certain titles, and I think if you look them on online, you may want to avoid those titles. But regardless, Sorcerer to the Crown combines Georgette Hare's sparkling wit with Susanna Clarke's really well-formed magical world. And honestly, I would put this book on the list just for Prunella because she is hilarious. She is a fantastic heroine. She is part of a magical boarding school. She has to go to a fairy court, and there is at least one extremely irritable witch auntie, and I don't know what else you need to know other than that. Go read Sorcerer to the Crown by Zen Cho. All right, 8th book. We're almost to the end. 8th book here is Swordheart. Sorry, let me say that again. The 8th book on the list is Swordheart by T. Kingfisher. This is not strictly Victorian or even Regency. T. Kingfisher tends to write, I guess you would call it more high fantasy, simply because the entire world itself is the structure and is make-believe, rather than low fantasy, where we're sprinkling magical elements or supernatural elements into the world that we recognize. The reason why I include this on the list is because this is for Swordheart is about a practical woman of a certain age, which I can relate to. She inherits a supernatural problem she did not ask for, and a romance that kind of earns every page it takes to get there, and it's delightful, I'm telling you. Hala, I think that's maybe how you say it. She inherits her great uncle's estate. This is a problem because his other relatives want it, and she draws this old sword in a moment of desperation, which happens to release Sarkis, an immortal swordsman who's been enchanted in the blade for several centuries and is not really sure what year it is. He is magically bound to protect whoever holds the sword, who is Hala, who happens to now be his responsibility. And he has feelings about that. I really enjoy T. Kingfisher's fantasy romances because she always has heroines that are really practical and kind and exasperated, which I feel like are the people that I enjoy reading about and the people that I like to be friends with in real life. Practical, kind, and occasionally exasperated. Someone put that on a t-shirt for me. I love it. Anyway, so this is a stretch pick. So if you want to try something close to cozy fantasy romance, but definitely more fantasy romance, less cozy, I would try Swordheart. Okay. The 9th book we have is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. For years, I thought it was Mr. Norrell, and then I think they made that movie, and I realized it was Mr. Norrell, and among many things about this book, I was like, of course I got that wrong. So this book is a stretch. It's like a homework assignment, okay? And I say this with full respect and love. I will admit, I did not make it through this book. I think that's because of things that were going on in my life at the time. I literally couldn't handle the dense prose and so many footnotes. It honestly read like an academic paper, and I had just finished grad school, and I was like, if I have to read another academic paper, I'm gonna do bad things. So I put that book aside. I actually have never tried to pick it back up again, but I feel like I should give it another chance because so many people recommended it to me over the years, and I just haven't gone back because I kind of bounce between my cozy fantasy romance, and contemporary rom-coms, and that's where I happily live. And of course, my historical romances. But so Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, this is a book that's set in an alternative 19th century England. Magic has been lost for centuries. There are two very different magicians trying to bring it back. This book is very long. It moves and reads like a Charles Dickens book. So it has really dry social wit, has a ton of footnotes, is very deliberate in its I don't want to say it's verbose, but it's just it's dense, but it's dense in a rich way. So even as I was reading it and realizing I'm not going to make it through this book, I was still able to admire Susanna Clarke's sentence structure. The prose in and of itself is very well done, beautiful. So if you're looking for something that's going to challenge you, then I would try this one. It did win the Hugo Award. It was on the Booker Prize long list, and a lot of people consider it one of the inspirations for the cozy fantasy genre. I don't know that I consider it that. I still look to Travis Baldree because he's the one that coined the phrase even, and it just took, I've been writing this stuff 10, 11 years, and we didn't have a name for it. So Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell isn't cozy, but it has funny moments. It is definitely strange, and it's one of those books that has the possibility of changing how you read afterward. So if you're looking for extra brownie points on your TBR, this would be the stretch assignment. And then to close the list, I'm going to include for the 10th book, Hunting with Trentwood by Belinda Kroll, which is me. And I am allowed to include myself because this is my podcast. So this is where Mary is resigned to being a spinster in her English countryside manor house when her father's ghost crawls out of the grave and is like, we need to get you married, girl. And she's like, I just want to read my books. It's been a couple years. It's been a hard couple years. I just want to read my books. There's a blackmailer involved. There's a gentleman caller that Mary is not interested in but won't leave the house. Her father's ghost has so many opinions about all of it. This book is gothic and it's funny, and it does kick off the Hesitant Medium series, which if you've made it to the end of this episode, I think you would really enjoy. So just so you know, signed and illustrated editions are available at worderella.com. If you're the sort of person who likes your books to feel special, which I think you are because you're listening to a podcast about imaginary 1887 tea parties and the books you would read at said tea party, you are absolutely this person. You should absolutely come treat yourself in my website. All right, that said, 10 books, 10 authors. I hope you guys take a look at them. I hope you guys send me a note of what you think about them. Are there other books I should have added to this list? I would definitely say start with Stephanie Burgess, India Holton, if you want a gentle introduction. Olivia Atwater and Tilly Wallace and Charlie Ann Holmberg are going to be kind of like the next level up, like slightly more challenging. And then Zen Cho and Susanna Clarke are going to have far more like multi-layered plot lines. So those books are likely to maybe introduce you to more of just fantasy romance rather than cozy fantasy romance. So if at any point you have found yourself thinking while listening to me chat about these books, gosh, I wish there were more books where a woman can see ghosts and spends the entire novel refusing to admit that she has feelings for the hero. Well, then I have good news. You should come check out the rest of my catalog. There's A Spirited Engagement, and like I said at the top of the podcast, An Uncanny Bargain, which is book 3 in the series, separate couple from books 1 and 2, so each book has its own couple. The special edition with exclusive swag and illustrations and digital signing and all of that will be launching soon. So check out An Uncanny Bargain. You could do that by visiting worderella.com/Kickstarter, and that should take you straight there. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you have enjoyed this. It's always kind of fun to chat about books that you've read and that you want other people to read because they've become your book besties. So y'all are my book besties, and I think you need to read these books. Let me know what you think. Send me an email, and I can't wait to chat with you next month. Bye! Worderella Reads is brought to you by Worderella.com. That's Cinderella, but with words. Thank you for listening today. You can find backlist episodes at worderella.com/podcast. You can get your free Cozy Fantasy ebook at worderella.com/news. And if you'd like to connect, you can find me on Instagram at Worderella. However you're listening and whenever you're listening, I'm glad you spent time with me. I'll see you in the next episode. Happy reading!